You're listening to the Clear Track HR Podcast, a show about employee benefits, employment law, and other topics for HR professionals. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you hear. Now here's our host, Zach Finney.
Thank you for listening to the Clear Track HR Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Finney. Very pleased to announce our guest today. His name is Garrett Keith. He's been with Westminster Christian Academy for 12 years as a strength and conditioning coach. He attended the University of North Alabama, where he was a 4-year letterman and captain of the UNA football team. Garrett is a certified strength and conditioning specialist through NSCA, as well as holding certification in underground strength, and is a certified physical preparation specialist. As if that wasn't enough, he is also the Alabama State Director for the National High School Strength Coaches Association, where he was also named the 2019 NHSSCA Coach of the Year. Welcome to the podcast. How's it going, Garrett?
Man, it is going good. Life is better than I deserve it, and I get to talk about things that I'm passionate about today, and that's always a joy.
And then just full disclosure to our audience. So Garrett was referred to me before as being a good podcast guest, and they didn't give me the name of this person at first. And then when I saw it, I said, I actually know this guy. We went to UNA together. We were in the same fraternity, so we've known each other for, been, I guess, 20 years now, Garrett. So I know you got my list that I gave you of things you're not allowed to talk about as far as our college days. You did get that, right?
I did get that, and I expect you to uphold your end of the bargain as well.
I do. I have the list, and I promise I won't. If our audience in the middle of the audio just hears a blank silence, that's because we probably had to black something out that was on the list. But we're going to try to forget about those times because they were fun, but they are behind us. And so what have you been up to these days? Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
So like Zach already mentioned, I've been coaching at Westminster for 12 years. Previously, I was at American Christian Academy in Tuscaloosa for 5 years. So I've been coaching for 17 years in Christian education. And the majority of that, the first 13 years of that, I was a football coach as well. And over the past 3 to 4 years, I've been able to step away from football and focus more of my energy on the whole of our student body. Now, ever since I've been at Westminster, I've been coaching all of our students. But during the fall, I wasn't able to do as much as I wanted to because of the time that football demanded as a position coach. So it's been a real blessing to be able to do that. I've got a wife who is an emergency room nurse. I've got 2 young children, a 9-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And as of today, our family grew. We got a dog for the first time in our marriage, which actually today is my wedding anniversary, 15 years today. So things have been going well. In the middle of this pandemic, coaching has changed a lot. The amount of students that I get to see on a normal basis has changed. A lot of them are on Zoom calls, but I have to remind myself every day that whether the kids are on Zoom or whether they're here in person, it's a blessing to get to coach them and be a part of their lives, and it's a huge calling and a responsibility.
And happy anniversary, man. I did not know that. You said 15 years?
15 years today.
Your wife must be a saint of a woman. So big shout out to her for putting up with Garrett for 15 years now. I mean, that's serious.
Yeah, there's no lies there. She is a better woman than I deserve.
Well, let's dig into kind of the strength and conditioning. When we think of strength and conditioning and sports in general, I mean, I personally think something that's underestimated is how sports really play a role in shaping individuals to be successful after sports. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think sports give us such an opportunity to reveal our character, but then also to develop it and change it. I've learned so many lessons in life because of athletics, and that's why I've been a part of it for so long. Recently, a friend of mine made a post about how important fine arts are in a school setting, and there was an undertone to it that made it sound like athletics weren't. And so I talked with this friend of mine, and I said, I understand your perspective, and fine arts do make a huge huge impact on a lot of students. There's no denying that. All the co-curricular activities that we've got at Westminster are a great opportunity for our students, but don't discount athletics and think of it just as something that takes place over a 4-year span as a high school athlete, or maybe a 8-year span if you're a college athlete as well. And then for the very, very few that go on to play professional athletics, it's not just about your time in the trenches playing those sports or even training for those sports. It's about what you learn about how to treat people, how to love people, how to come together as a community, how to look past your differences that you have, and show people respect. And with the things that have gone on in our country that have been brought to light, things that have been going on for hundreds of years, but things that have really been brought to light over the past few months. I think athletics is a great place where we learn those lessons of, regardless of the color of our skin, the culture that we're from, or whatever. Man, you get in a football locker room, or you get in a basketball huddle, you get in a baseball dugout, or whatever the case may be, and you're not worried about those things. You're focused on working together for a purpose greater than yourself. And those things play a huge role, whether you end up like me in a coaching field, or if you end up as an executive in an office building. If it's just about you, your company's probably not going to be successful. But if you've learned how to get a team to work together, you've learned how to fight through differences and fight through conflict and come out the other side better, then your company's going to be better. I talk to our kids. We use a book written by John Gordon called The Hard Hat. It's 21 lessons on how to be a great teammate. And when we go through that in our character curriculum, I tell them, that a lot of this talks about being a great teammate, different sports, examples. But the thing that I want you to understand as a student is a team is not just a sports team in this instance, what we're talking about. As a school, we're a team. Everybody that puts that W on their shirt, that puts that W on their shorts or whatever, they're, as a part of Westminster, we're one big team from K3 through 12th grade, from the head of school to the janitorial staff. It doesn't matter. We're part of a team. Your family's a team. I like to tell my own children, hey, we're Team Keith. And my children will tell you, Keiths don't quit. We're not going to do that. We're not about that. Our team's got certain values that we've got to live by. And I love, I ask my students sometimes, what are some other examples of teams? And they'll say, our church, it's a team. I feel like you're exactly right. Everybody's got a job to do, and we've got to do our job and love each other while we're doing it. And so I think those are some of the things that are life lessons that continue on after athletics. And it's those things that I harp on to our kids, because no matter how strong, no matter how fast I can get a kid, no matter how athletic they are, eventually all those skills and tools are going to diminish. And what tools have I given them to be the best man or woman they can be, to be the best father or husband, the best wife, the best mother? What tools have I given them to be is what's going to last the longest. And it's those and the relationships that I get to build through this calling that I really love.
And then you mentioned values. I spoke to some of your players, and they had mentioned your core values when it comes to strength and conditioning. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So in our character curriculum, the first thing that I go through every year is our core values, and these aren't this isn't the philosophy of strength and conditioning. It's not talking about multi-joint ground-based movements, or the different phases of hypertrophy and speed and power and strength development. Our core values for us is, when I go through it, I explain first off what the word core and what the word values means. And when we talk about core from the body's perspective, its main job isn't to flex and do sit-ups. So its main job is to provide stability for our body while our body's in motion. So whether we're running, jumping, doing a deadlift, doing a squat, our core is there to provide stability. Because if it doesn't, we're not going to be able to complete that squat. We're not going to be fast. We're not going to be able to jump high. That's why people who teach core exercises that are applicable to athletics, the majority of them, they're doing things like low planks, they're doing side planks, or dead bugs, different core exercises that create stability. And then we'll explain what values mean. That the word value means what something's worth. And so we'll go through talking about that everybody has a different set of values, and it's not, or that everybody values things differently. It's not just monetarily. It could be what something is valuable to you emotionally. We all see those things differently. So we talk about our core values being the things that create stability for us emotionally and spiritually while life is in motion. And so we'll go through and I'll explain to them that, hey, life is going to be good and there's going to be bad times in life. And if you don't have something that's going to bring you back to your homeostasis, it's not going to, if you don't have something that's going to create stability for your life, you're going to make reactions based on emotions instead of decisions that are based on values. And the majority of the time, when we make reactions that are based on emotions, we have to live with some consequences that we're not happy about. Whether it's getting cut off in traffic and reacting emotionally and yelling and giving them some sign language or whatever that may be, we got to live with the consequences of that. Man, if my daughter's in the back seat and she sees me act like that, I got to deal with the consequences if she thinks that's okay. But if I make a decision based on values and I say, man, I have no idea what that person is going through. If I show empathy towards that person and just go, no big deal, and my daughter sees that as how I react. And so I get to live with the consequence of that, which is a good thing. And so our core values are God-centered, consistent, accountable, respectful, and efficient. And so we'll spend a week going through, and when I say a week, we'll spend one session per week going through what each one of those core values means for me as a coach and for them as a student. And because I want them to know what they should expect out of me, and I want them to know what I'm going to expect out of them. And then when we finish going through those, we'll talk about the origin of that, which is actually from Matthew 22:37-40. When Christ told us that the greatest commandment was to love the Lord your God, and the second greatest was to love your neighbors yourself. And that's where all of our core values is based out of. And then the next step of that is I'll go through a series of teaching them how to create their own core values. Because as much as I want them to know the core values of Westminster Strength and Conditioning, in 5 years, my core values don't matter if they didn't create their own core values, because they're going to be in a situation where they've got to make choices based off of their values. And if they don't have any values, they're going to make some pretty bad choices. So I love going through that process. And if you will, I could spend an hour talking about these. So I can delve off deep into that, or we can leave it there if you want to.
And that's great, Gary. And then let's think of think about athletes. You mentioned that previously being a position coach and that sort of thing, but now you're getting to work with all the student athletes or the entire student population. When you're thinking of building an entire school population, workout regimen, for example, I mean, when that's applied to an athlete, do you need to adapt the workout regimen to be based on their gender, their current athletic ability, or even the person's individual mindset, or is it just standard across the board?
So we've got a progression. We've got 4 blocks: block 0, block 1, block 2, block 3. And so it's kind of based on training age. So block 0 is students that are new to the school or they're new to the program, and it's their first time with me. And it's really not based off of chronological age. It's based off of their training age. And even if a student, they come in and you can tell they've got a good bit of muscle mass, they're an athlete, they're going to start off in block 0 because I want to make sure their movement patterns are correct. They may just be a genetic freak that's got a lot of muscle, but they don't move well. And so I want to make sure they move well first. So that's what block 0 is about. Block 1 is where we start loading them. And they have to hit certain landmarks before they move up to block 2 and block 3, which is where we load them with a barbell and we start doing some different things with them. And the program becomes a little bit more not complicated, but a little bit more difficult. So really, it's not based off of gender. There's old myths that females shouldn't train like males. Well, if I'm asking a female to do basically the same thing a male is on the field, yeah, there needs to be about 90% of it's going to be the same. Are there some things that need to be a little bit different? Yeah, there's a very small portion that may need to be a little bit different. There's some things that a female can do that males can't do. Females generally train at a higher volume, at a higher intensity, or with a higher intensity than males can. We know that males generally have more upper body mass than females do. So there's some differences there. But it's more about where they're currently at ability-wise and trying to progress them to the next level. That block zero to me is just a body weight program really, and some very lightweight dumbbells. But it's a great way to get students that are intimidated by a weight room, that are intimidated by a coach. And I know this isn't a video call, so you can't see me, but I'm 6'2", about 250 pounds, bald head with a big beard. So a young student may be intimidated the first time, and I've got an angry resting face. So, students come in and like, what's that guy mad about? I'm like, I'm not mad, I'm happy. That can be intimidating to a young student. And I want to take away that intimidation factor when they first come in and give them a sense of, hey, this weight room's for me. It's not just for the big football players. It's not just even for the stud athletes. I love having students in my class that don't play any sports. In fact, this past year I had a parent email me before the school year started, and they said obviously with the COVID protocols and issues, they were worried about sizing of classes. And I had a mom email me and say, hey, my son doesn't play any sports. I know you're worried about, the sizing of the classes. Can he still be in there? Do you want him in there? And I said, man, I'd love to have him in there, because my purpose is bigger than developing athletes and helping teams win. That's a part of my goals, but my purpose is to make a lasting impact on every student that I can. So do I want your son in there? Crap, yes, I want him in there. Please bring him in there. And I love seeing those students develop a love for the weight room and develop a desire to move up in blocks, which is what those landmarks are there for, where kids have to hit certain ability levels before they move on to the more difficult thing.
And so let's just think about football. So if you're making a workout regimen, just that strategy for building and developing that team, does the workout regimen change based on, let's say, the style of play that team plays with? So a team that runs the ball 90% of the time versus one that's throwing the rock all over the place?
In the high school setting, unless you're at a very highly developed high school, I don't think it does. Now, in the weight room, from the conditioning perspective, yes, there's going to be a lot that goes on the conditioning level that is going to need to change if you are a high tempo offense, or and again, the conditioning changes a lot based on the sport that you play. But from a strength and conditioning standpoint, in the weight room, the majority of the athletes that we have are so general that they need pretty much the same thing. They need to be able to create stability. They need to be able to get in certain movement patterns. They need to get stronger. I've never had an athlete that was too strong. I've never had an athlete that was too stable. So they need those things in the weight room first, and then the specificity really comes into play in conditioning and in practices. One of the things that a lot of people talk about is sport-specific workouts, and there's a misunderstanding or miscommunication out there about at what level you really need what they would say sport-specific is. The weight room is GPP, it's general physical preparedness. And the majority, again, 90% of what we're going to do in the weight room is build those foundational movement patterns and strength levels that every athlete needs. And then 10% of the time may be, hey, I'm dealing with overhead athletes or a quarterback or somebody that puts their body in a certain position that we need to modify movements for them. But as far as from a philosophical standpoint of a football team in the weight room, no, I don't think you're going to make a ton of changes there. You know, I don't think, even if you're air raid offense, you're not going to go, at least in my situation, I'm not going to say, well, you know, that lineman's too big. We got to stop having him lift so many weights. Now,
Right.
there may be some schools that have that problem, and man, I'd love to have that problem, to have a bunch of 6'5", 290-pound kids that I said, you know, you're too big, but we
Right.
don't have that problem.
And I mean, let's go back to the first quarter of 2020. I mean, I got to assume your job changed dramatically after the pandemic hit.
Wow. You know, honestly, I just got chills thinking about that. I was at a kind of a function with some friends, one of them being our head of school, on March 13th, when we found out that we were going to be shut down for a week. At the beginning, it was a week or two after spring break, because we were just about to go into spring break. And I remember thinking, man, a week or two, that's going to be tough. And then it turned into a month, and then the rest of the spring. And then in the summer, when we finally got back together, it was a whole different world, and how we were training. I had blue tape and green tape all over our weight room taped off. We had X's outside the weight room where students had to stand, and we had to get their temperature before they walked in the weight room. They had to go to their box, and they stayed in their box. They had to change clothes, and they could only enter the weight room in one place and exit it in another. They had to change clothes from training out to practice, from practice into training. The amount of disinfectant and that we've gone through, the amount of towels that we've washed since all this happened has been crazy. And it was really hard for a while, especially for the kids to have to do something that was so different from what they've done. And one of the things I love about our administration at Westminster is we're going to do the best thing we could with the information that we had. You know, I know there's some places that I know of that, man, things didn't change a whole lot for them. They just went on as normal, just threw masks on at first. And we were going to, you know, do what we thought was best for our students. And it was tough. But what hasn't changed is the focus on building relationships and building young people up for what God's meant for them. And it's been, you know, vital for us as educators and as coaches to understand that no matter how frustrated we may be with the situation and not being able to coach and do some of the activities that we used to do, it's just as hard or harder for the students. So probably the biggest toll that it's taken is needing to be more intentional with seeing how our students are doing and being there for them and providing an escape for them from some craziness and providing support for them.
And then, you know, this is so on a personal level. I know our team here at Clear Track, when here we had to go to transition to, you know, that full remote work. And in theory, you know, I may have gained like 8 pounds since Thanksgiving. I think after Thanksgiving, I'm trying to lose that. But I mean, with organizations moving to that remote work, do you have any pointers on what people can do to stay mobile and healthy during the work week?
Yeah, so, you know, my job, I'm up moving around all the time. And when we first went to remote learning in the spring, I was sitting on my butt most of the day in front of a computer screen, talking to kids, doing all these conferences and things. And man, I felt for people that normally sit all day, because my back I had some back issues just from sitting all day. And so I can imagine what, you know, the population that's sitting all day and doing that working from home, how difficult that is. A few things that I would say, very general, because obviously everybody's got their own needs, but is create a schedule. It's so easy to, if you get off of a call, whether it be a conference call or a little bit of work, to just sift over to social media, or maybe for you to sift over to some news channel and watch or to read up on the latest political issues or whatever. But I would say anytime that you get off of a call and you've got the ability to get up, even if it's for 10 minutes, get up and walk, to get up and be active, to stretch. There's a ton of information out there on stretches that you can do, even in an office setting. And I've shown some of my coworkers this at different times, things that you can do. Your hip flexors get incredibly tight when you sit all the time. And when your hip flexors get tight, it puts stress on your low back. Everybody, develops low back problems, are very common. And people try to stretch their back. And it's one of those things where, hey, you need to spend some time on your hip flexors. You need to spend some time on your glutes. And one thing I'll throw out there that, everybody out there can YouTube this, Joe DeFranco Limber 11. The video is about 19 minutes long, but once you learn the program, it takes about 10 minutes to do. And you only need a lacrosse ball or some type of ball and a foam roller. And the rest of it is just stuff you do with just your body. But man, if you're out there suffering from low back pain, that's a great little tool that I've used over the years and used with my athletes when they need it. But other than that, I would say start the day with activity. People get wrapped up and I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to spend an hour for working out. I mean, you don't have to. If you're looking for some general healthier habits, now it's not going to get you to look like an IBF, bodybuilder, but if you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is go for a 20-minute walk, and that's going to have an effect on not just your physical health, but also your mental health. And then there's been, several high-level coaches that have pushed for the benefit of multiple 10-minute walks a day. So it may be where you get off that conference call, and man, I got 15 minutes to my next one. Well, I'm going to get up and go for a walk outside. And not only are you getting that activity, but you're getting vitamin D that most of us have a deficiency in as well. So I think those would be the main things. Create a schedule, start the day with activity, divide your workout throughout the day. It may be that you get multiple 10-minute walks, or you get, a set of push-ups, a set of planks and some walking lunges in 10 minutes. And then you're back on the computer and you do it again later. But being consistent about it is going to be the major key to success. Is not just doing it for a week and you feel a little sore and you stop it, but finding a way to continue. And my athletes will tell you that when they start talking about being sore, say, man, motion is lotion. And if you're sitting still when you're sore, you're not going to stop being sore. You got to get moving.
I like that. And then I did take notes during that whole answer, Garrett. So I'm starting tomorrow though. I'm going to do it.
There we go.
And I mean, if there's any way we could move my kitchen like away during the work hours, it'd be great. It's so convenient, Garrett. I can see it from my office. I just see the fridge.
Zach, you hit on what is the number one key, and I can't believe I didn't mention this. You can't out-train a bad diet. No matter how many walks you go on and how much exercise you do, man. I've been trying to do it for majority of my life, and I'm proof that you can't out-train a bad diet. So nutrition is key.
And Gary, I appreciate you coming on the podcast with. I mean, you have brought a plethora of great information, but here on the podcast, we like to learn the expertise of our guests and then kind of get to know them on a more lighter note by doing some rapid random fire questions. Are you down for that?
Man, I'm always down.
All right, dude, let's start it up. We'll easy softball to start with. What is your favorite TV series of all time?
Friends.
Nice. If you could go back in time to your college days, what advice would you give yourself?
Be smarter, make better decisions.
I can attest to that. And then We mentioned before the show started, we were in a fraternity together. What was the best part about being in a fraternity in college?
The bonding, the time together, the opportunity to meet more people and build more relationships. Life is about relationships, and the fraternity gave me an opportunity to build a lot more of them.
Should we measure greatness by championships?
No, in some instances they can help to attest to greatness, but there are other ways to measure it as well.
And then what do we think here? I'm going to name two things. You tell me what's better, which is better. Just whatever you prefer on this. All right.
Okay.
NFL or college football?
College football.
Alabama or Auburn?
Alabama, Roll Tide.
Amen. Offensive line or defensive line?
Offensive line, man, they're selfless.
They're the smartest of the whole team, right? That's your most intelligent
right.
people.
That's right.
Ground and pound or air raid?
Ground and pound. Let's run the rock.
Trevor Lawrence or Mac Jones?
Mac Jones, the Joker.
Okay, so if you're sitting the Jets #1 pick, you're not going to pick Trevor Lawrence?
Now, you didn't say who was the #1 pick.
I
You
did.
asked me who I
No,
like
I'm
the most.
asking. If you had the
Okay.
#1 pick and you're an NFL team, which one would you go with?
I'm picking Trevor Lawrence.
Just because of the upside?
Yeah.
Have
I
you?
mean, Mac Jones is a pro-style quarterback, though.
I'm not trying to jinx the guy, but he reminds me of Tom Brady. I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan, but it's the same. It's just very fast decisions, and because he makes it look so easy, I think it's underestimated how good this kid is. I mean, the balls he's throwing, especially deep balls, I mean, over 35 yards is ridiculous.
Yeah, and people, talk about the tools he's got, and he's got amazing tools, but he also has to be able to put the rock out there so they don't have to adjust to it. They can just catch it on the fly.
Absolutely. Bird or Magic?
Man, first instinct, I said Bird.
I mean, yeah, I would like a player that could make a jump shot, so I'm with you. Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith?
Oh, man, I grew up loving Emmitt Smith, but if we're going with the best, it's Barry.
I mean, how many yards is Barry getting if he got to run behind that offensive line that Emmett got instead of being
He's going to have every yard.
every yard? Exactly. Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan, get your mind right.
First of all, my child's name is MJ. You don't have to tell me to get my mind right on Jordan, but I would have ended the podcast right then if you said LeBron. Kobe or LeBron?
Yeah. In respect to Kobe. And I do love LeBron. Don't let me come off like a LeBron hater. I do love LeBron.
You are
Amazing athlete.
LeBron here.
I mean,
Best passer that ever played.
Basketball or football?
No, I'm saying LeBron, I think, is the best passer to ever play the game. Like, you think of everything else about him, but he makes a bounce pass from 28 feet to a shooter's pocket better than any player in the history, in my opinion. It's incredible, his passing ability.
Yeah, he's special, and I've always been in awe of his athletic ability. He's just a freak. In a world of freaks, he's a freak.
I mean, what would he look like at a tight end position? I mean, what are you going to do with that?
He'd be an all-pro Hall of Famer.
So, speaking of all-pro Hall of Famers, who is the best NFL quarterback of all time?
Come on now, Tom Brady's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT? I agree 100%.
He's the GOAT.
If Wilt Chamberlain played in today's NBA, would he be an all-star?
Yes. There's not enough big man in the league that could. No, yeah, there's not enough guys in the post. Now, obviously, he's not getting out on the perimeter and doing any work. But man, who's gonna stop him in the post?
I think anybody was going to stop him in post, and I think that with today's game, he's borderline irrelevant if he's 7'1", 276 and can't shoot a jump shot. But he played. It's like if we went out and played against, I don't know, a kindergarten basketball team. That is the size relation to who he was playing against. I mean, he was playing against people's accountants in the NBA. I mean, he scored 100 points. I don't know if anybody was taller than 5'6" in that game. I mean, so I don't know. I guess he would adapt because he's an athlete. I mean, I think he was even in the Olympics, wasn't he? Through shot put or something. So I guess
Yeah, he
I'll
was a
lean.
freak.
Yeah. Who wins in a cage fight, Nick Saban or Mike Ditka?
Oh man, I'm an Alabama guy, but Ditka.
I mean, he beats everything, right? If you could go
That's right.
back in time and see any musician live front row, who would it be?
Man, I don't know why, but my mind instantly goes to Jimi Hendrix.
That's mine. Good tip, man. Good taste. And then last and final question, my favorite question that we ask, what is the best movie of all time?
My favorite movie of all time is Tombstone.
Great choice. Garrett, man, I appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us today. I know you're super busy, and thanks so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. I know you mentioned, I believe, Joe DeFranco, Limber 11, the Hard Hat. Look, we're going to put that all in show notes, and anything else, Garrett, that you would like to send over, we're going to put it in show notes so people can see that resource that you were talking about. And again, I appreciate you coming on. And I hope you come back sometime, man.
Man, I appreciate it. You did a great job hosting, and I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about things that I'm passionate about.
Awesome. And thank you so much for all our listeners. Please like and subscribe. You can find all things podcast at www.cleartrackhr.com/podcast. I'm your host, Zach Finney, for our guest, Garrett Keefe. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you again soon.